So, it's a short and sweet talk with one goal, really, which is just to, if you've managed to avoid this announcement that I've been making, it's a new way of deploying Kubeflow. It's open source, it's free, it's a combination of a lot of work, years of work. It's pretty much been my vision since the beginning for how I think Kubeflow can be deployed, and we'll go into what that looks like. So, maybe if I could actually go, there we go. So, I only have 3 main points, which is what is deploykf, how do I get started with it, and where is deploykf going next. There's kind of these are the key headings kind of stuff. I'm going to executive summary in case you want to blank out after the next few minutes. Key features, and then kind of some more technical stuff. So what is deploykf? Well, the executive summary is this. It's a bit marketing-y, sorry about that, but I think it's good, which is deploykf builds a world-class ML platforms on any Kubernetes cluster, on any cloud environment in minutes. That's the marketing part. And then the next part where you probably care about is, the main reason is this line right here, centralized configs. So with centralized configs, in-place upgrades, and support for Kubeflow and other, deploykf lets you focus on, using it, not building it. So key features, there are a few others, but I think these are the most important ones to understand what it is before you see it, which is it supports more than just Kubeflow. It supports Kubeflow really well, don't get me wrong, but it supports more than Kubeflow. It supports in-place upgrades, so a lot of the things that people have been complaining about. Well, actually, I'll just take one step aside. A lot of the talks today have been about things that are not issues with deploykf for various reasons. Sometimes that's because of just the approach taken being quite substantially different to how you deploy manifests upstream, but other times it's quite foundational changes in how stuff works. So the in-place upgrades are really important, and what I mean by autonomously roll out config changes is really, I'm hinting at 2 things there. It's that this whole product is a GitOps tool, really. So it's able to reconcile any config change you may have without you having to interact or do anything. So if that config change is adding a new user, nothing needs to be kicked or restarted. Or if it's rotating a secret to a database external connection, if it's rotating, it can get pretty technical, so I won't go too much into that. But again, come back to this, centralized configs. Like, if what you want is a Helm chart for Kubeflow, this is going to give you what you're actually wanting. And we can talk into why it's not a straight Helm chart if someone wants to ask that later. So how do I get started? And this is another way of saying, what is it, So these are what the centralized configs look like. They are YAML, right? They don't have to be in one file. They can be. The file is very long by default. There are sensible defaults, but anything you could conceivably want to configure is configurable there. But I don't mean that in the sense of there's no duplication. So for example, if you set the cert manager cluster issuer type, you don't have to then set it in the same place down in the apps which you use it. You only set that in the one place. Or, for example, if you are disabling one of the Kubeflow components, say you don't want ksub, say you don't want whatever, if you turn that, there's one value, turn that off. And if once it's off, every other hook into that app turns off as well. So what that means is, so the sidebar, there's no more link on the sidebar, there's no more risky credential things that might be leaked around, RBAC bindings. So they look like this. They're a bit hard to see at this distance, but this is one for static passwords for DEX, and these are the profiles, because that's one of the big substantial differences, that the profiles are managed in the values in deploykf, not in the cluster. And that's for a number of reasons. One of which is quite magical. I'll show you it in a second. So what is Argo CD? Well, I just want to show you this because right now deploykf requires Argo CD to be used, and we can debate every day about Flux CD versus other ones, but realistically you should be using some form of reconciliation loop to deploy anything as complicated as deploykf, but Kubeflow. And so if you've never seen Argo CD, effectively each of this is the UI, there's also a CLI. Each of these is an app. It's called an app. And this first one is quite a powerful one. It's called the app of apps, but we'll talk about that. The next ones, so like you can see Cert Manager, Istio, Kyverno, Dashboard, things like that. So from your perspective as a user, these are like the components, and these will come and go. Sorry, yeah, you're right, actually. Sorry, hopefully everyone else could hear me there. I'm sorry about that. Yes. So Argo CD, we got that. I'll just show you a quick live demo of that. Nothing really too fancy. So this cluster's already been deployed. For reference, for those of you wondering, oh, do I have to sync all of these apps manually? No, there is a script to do it. Takes about 5 minutes from an empty cluster, and in my testing works 100% of the time. Not 100%, but you know, it's idempotent, so you can just run the script again if it fails. So you know, we can look inside of the app of apps because that's kind of fun. And so this is the root app which deploys the other apps, and you can see these are, if this is the number of apps, you can imagine how many manifests might be in this whole project. So let's go back to this. So the next part, maybe I have to click. Okay, so deploy KF, what does it look like? Just dashboard, just, you know, visual. It looks like Kubeflow, kind of a little bit different with some other changes, and because it supports more than Kubeflow, the sidebar gets kind of adjusted a bit depending on what you deploy. And so you've got multiple Airflow clusters, you'd see multiple in there, stuff like that. And so obviously we can quickly kind of look at one that's pre-baked. You can, it's when you're dealing with the Kubeflow apps, it's just going to be the normal Kubeflow. This is one cool thing I'll just show you. I was hinting at it before, which is, so Argo Server and MinIO Console are included. You don't have to use these, to be clear, especially for licensing reasons, but they're included. And the magical part is, when you log into MinIO Console, this is the UI for MinIO. To be clear, we're using the latest version here, not some old version, because AGPL v3 doesn't affect this project in the same way that it would affect Kubeflow. And again, actually, for any lawyers listening from MinIO, to be clear, there is absolutely no AGPL v3 code included anywhere in this project, so it is Apache 2.0 licensed. It only enables you to deploy AGPL v3 code. Distinctions. Okay, so you click on the console, you get prompted with another login again, which is the same one that you would have to go into deploy KF's dashboard itself. But the difference here is it's managed by MinIO, and the crazy thing here is, depending on which profiles that you're assigned to, your access level in the bucket is changed. So for example, this is user 1. They have access to team 1, so they're able to see under this folder. And I believe there actually is a run that's happened on this cluster under another namespace, and they can't see it at all, which is kind of cool. So anyway, so let's go back to this. So how do I get started? Well, first off, I just want to highlight, because I get this question a lot, like, because people see on the Kubeflow website, they see you know, distributions like Amazon's distribution, and those are fine. But like, it's not that you can't use this on Amazon. In fact, you can use it anywhere. Any Kubernetes cluster works. Obviously, if the cluster itself is non-compliant, it might not work. You know, OpenShift, for example. But I'm not claiming they're not compliant, but you know, there's ways that you can deploy it that are not compliant. Anyway, okay. So object stores. It does work with all of these. Just because of this, we're specifically talking about Kubeflow pipelines here. Just want to highlight you can use it. Identity providers, another common question. Because again, these are really just going through the things that you as a admin of a cluster would usually have to patch crazy amounts of manifests to actually connect all these things, and who knows other problems that you might have. So it's like, for example, I'll just show you this one because it's kind of good. So if there's a specific guide for connecting identity providers, and I'm going to do a bit more referencing here on this website soon. Like, this is just the minimum kind of required to get you going on this specific piece. But you know, you can connect any LDAP or OpenID Connect provider. Anyway, let's keep going. MySQL database, it's the same thing. You can use RDS. There's nothing that's preventing you. Turning off the embedded MySQL is as simple as changing one value. And I'll just quickly show you one thing. So here's the values for connecting, well, it's Katib, but let's look at pipelines. So like, this is the values for connecting KFP to an external MySQL. You'd turn on use external equals true, and you'd specify the correct host, and then you could specify username and password, just plain text if you're living dangerous. And then, or you could define it from a Kubernetes existing secret. And now the magical part here is, let's say you get that secret from Vault or Secret Manager. And it changes because your security team tells you have to rotate the database secret every week or day or hour if they're crazy. Normally you'd have to go kick this pod, right? Because, and potentially anything else that might be using it. This will automatically kick, deploy KF will automatically kick it when it changes. Let's keep going. I'm almost done here. these are like some guides I just want to highlight because we're talking about how do you get started. Well, these are the ones that I think you should look at first. Obviously, look at getting started, but these are ones that I want to highlight, which is how do I connect an external MySQL S3? How do I configure the gateway? That one is very long because, as you might imagine, there are a lot of ways to put things on the internet. Okay, so where's DeployKF going next? Well, I've kind of structured these as now and next, kind of ambiguous. But obviously, as soon as 1.8's out, we'll release a cut a release that you'll be able to in-place upgrade if you've already deployed DeployKF. For 1.8, of course, I'm going to continue supporting. So 0.1 is out, that kind of branch. We'll continue supporting that kind of. It's more like a canonical type versioning structure here. So it's not like once 0.2 comes out, we stop supporting 0.1. It's because, again, this is a collection of tools at specific versions. There'll be no breaking version changes of those internal tools for the 0.2 release. So, if you need to keep using KFP v1, you can keep using 0.1 and there'll be security patches and stuff. Well, depending on what you mean. And I'll be releasing some platform-specific guides. Now, the more exciting stuff is kind of coming later, sorry. So MLflow Model Registry, I think this is a really important tool to complete your ML platform. Apache Airflow, for those who don't know, I maintain the Airflow Helm chart. And I think there's good synergies here with that. And it's not that I want you to take your data Airflow and start deploying it with DeployKF. It's more that your data team has Airflow. Let's leave them with that. Let's not try and take that world over. But sometimes KFP isn't the right tool for the job, and Airflow is better for some reason. So having that option and the ability to deploy more than one Airflow cluster with the same values is kind of cool. Feast, obviously, is great. Kserve, obviously. Technically, there's ambiguous where it's part of Kubeflow. For the first release of DeployKF, it doesn't include Kserve, mostly due to Knative kind of being a bit of a mess. But that's, and there's some secret stuff, but I really can't talk about that. So, yeah, hopefully I didn't take too long. If anyone's got any questions or things they want me to specifically demo, I just want to call out one thing. Please star on GitHub because it's a very new project. It helps people see that people are looking at it. If you're a partner or if you're I don't know, if you want support, I'm a consultant. That's what I do. This is obviously becoming more and more of my life, but if you want help with your ML AI stuff, please reach out. That's for DeployKF, but you can find me by Googling me. Go to the website, check it out. Okay, I've opened the floor for a minute or two for questions, or on Slack, I guess. Anyone got? Oh yeah, yes sir.
I have one very fast question. When I was reviewing the Kubeflow official documentation, it was stating that the three solutions for deploying EKS, AKS, Google, but not Rancher, K3S. For me, that's very important because I'm working on that. So, are you sure? You can say it's supported fully?
Yeah, it works. So I test it locally, right? I don't test it on, well, I test it everywhere, but like when I'm doing my development of the tool, I'm doing it on K3S.
Perfect.
Right. So, and that's, and also I'll talk about one other thing as well, which is I'll address some of the concerns that people have had from the talks previously of the day. So security. There are some of the bugs that are still relevant to this just because of the same tools being used. But for example, MinIO sharing the same credentials for all profiles is not the case here. It will automatically generate them dynamically and they're scoped to the correct access. Stuff like that namespace selector bug actually was accidentally patched in this because of another patch, but anyway. Anyway, I won't go through each of them. Anyone else got questions?
A point about support. It's supported by you.
Yes.
Not necessarily the whole.
This is a separate project to Kubeflow. Me and my role as the notebook lead as well, that's not related to this, okay? So, just to be clear.
So the support part is from Matthew, not the project as a whole.
And to be clear, there's no official commercial support at this time for DeployKF, but if you want consulting and stuff, that's effectively support for the now. But I'm supporting every issue I see on the repo. Obviously, I'm not running away. I've had some pretty crazy turnarounds, like the automated syncing script, for example, was like someone's like, I need that. I'm like, oh yeah, it's a good idea. Let's do it. Yeah. Any other? Check on the Slack as well. But let's see. If not, oh yeah. We'll start with the guy at the back. Yep.
Yeah. Earlier
Mm.
different? What is the distinction you can make about?
So it's not a Helm chart, but it feels like one. That's kind of what the goal is. So when you're actually deploying these values, they're the source of truth, right? So between a version upgrade, you don't need to think about the manifests. You think about the values, and these won't be breaking changed. And if they are, they'll be documented, right? So you define connections, you define the pieces you're using. So like just for those wondering how it actually gets deployed, the app of apps piece, this contains the values in both either from pulling from a GitHub or Git repo, sorry. Let's go on to the manifest. So like it, okay, that's just hard to see. Let's just go to the example one. So Argo CD plugin mode, there is another mode. We won't talk about that one. So like these are the parameters here. You know, you can specify values files that are coming from a Git repo, and it will reconcile that state, or you can specify them in the application itself if you're anti-Git repos or something. Sorry, there was another question from the middle. Hopefully that answered your question.
Quick one, is there a way to kind of locally generate all the manifests that we're generating?
I feel like you're trying to set me up or something, because that's literally the one that I was just saying next. So yeah, so if you want to render the whole manifests into a repo and use them like the old manifests, you can do that too. You still get the benefit of the applications from Argo CD because they still get generated. The only difference being that rather than using the plugin, you do have to set these values at the top, which tell the internal apps where you've put them. So like this is on this repo, so that, you know, this URL. And if you're familiar with Argo CD, that will feel like source repo. It's literally the same names. But you don't have to do it this way if you don't want to. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. I'm just wondering, so there are like several tools that kind of like overlap in terms of MLflow, right?
Mhm.
Kubeflow,
Mhm.
Airflow,
Mhm.
supporting Red, if you're talking about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of overlaps. So I'm just wondering, from the DeployKF perspective, how users won't be confused all these tools and how they use them, right?
So ML platforms are very specific to your company. The question was like, there's a lot of tools and there's going to be more. How do I, as a user, not get overwhelmed and choose the right tools for my platform? In an ML platform, you wouldn't. The purpose of this tool is to take all of the complexity of deploying the stuff out of it and configuring it. So the goal is that if you're familiar with Kubernetes enough that you can sync some Argo CD apps, that you can get a world-class ML platform deployed and maintained, you know, in a couple of minutes, right? Connecting it to your environment might take more than that, but you know, like S3 and whatnot takes time to set up and stuff like that. But I don't see it as like a negative so much as a positive, right? Where it's like you can, if you feel like it, you can just go Kubeflow only. If you feel like it and you need some other piece, like an Airflow cluster for something, you can chuck it in there. To answer the question directly of how do I actually prevent overwhelmingness, well, there is user guides and they're going to get more end-to-end like problem specific. But right now what they are is there's I'll call this out because it's useful for people not using DeployKF. Obviously there's the Access Kubeflow Pipelines API, but this one is kind of cool, which is there's GitOps for Kubeflow Pipelines. This could be its own talk, but it's like, how do I actually manage not the platform of Kubeflow Pipelines with GitOps, but how do I manage the pipelines that I've deployed? Similar to what I would call, it's not the same, but you know, in Airflow we have this concept called Git sync, which is where you define your DAGs in a Git repo and then it reconciles into your Airflow cluster automatically, and then you deploy new DAGs by merging PRs, right? And similarly, there's a way of doing that with this. I'm not going to go into it. Read the repo. It's literally probably its own half-an-hour talk. Okay, yeah. Lots of questions, but I haven't checked the Slack, but hopefully nothing I can see. So if nothing else, then I'll hand it back to Amber.